So, hello everybody, and welcome back to Kaju Samyuzong Edinburgh, and to session 2 of Precious Human Life, which is one of the 4 foundations, the first of the 4 preliminary foundations, or you can also call it the 4 ways of turning the mind to Dharma. So before we start the actual teachings, let's start the session well by saying the Refuge Prayer. And then I would like to, so that's with taking refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, and we can say that 3 times. So maybe the first time I'll say it in English, and then we'll say it 2 times in the Tibetan phonetics. And then we can say the Dorji Chang prayer, the lineage prayer, also called the Vajradhara prayer. It's all the same. Vajradhara is Sanskrit for Dorji Chang. Dorji Chang is the primordial Buddha. And if you came to the session that we did, the previous course on the door to Dharma, we went into that in some detail. But it's an amazing prayer, and it's full of wonderful teaching and advice on how to meditate. So it's a really good one to do, and also to sort of supplicate the lineage. Kaju lineage. So we'll start with the refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the noblest Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. Through the virtue generated by the practice of generosity and other virtues, may I achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. O Sanjay Chotang Suji Chonam La Changcho Padu Dani Chapsunji Dagi Jinso Jipe Sanamji Dola Penche Sanjay Do Parsho Sanjay Chotang Suji Chonam La Changcho Padu Dani Chapsunji Dagi Jinso Jipe Sanamji Dola Pinchir Sanjay Do Parsho. And so now we'll say the lineage prayer, the Vajradhara prayer, and we'll say that in English. Actually, it's more sort of almost chanting it really. It's got a very nice melody with it. So yes, well, I think it gives it more feeling as well. Great Vajradhara Tilonaro Marpamila Dharma Lord Gampopa, knower of the 3 times, omniscient Karmapa, holders of the 4 elder and 8 younger lineages, Drikontaklung and the Salpa, glorious Drugpa, and so forth. Masters of the profound path of Mahamudra, to the Dagpo instruction lineage, the peerless protectors of wanderers. Kaju Lamas, I supplicate you, I uphold your lineage. Grant the blessings of your liberating lives. Just as revulsion is taught to be the legs of meditation, this meditator clings not to food and riches, and has severed the ties to this life. Grant your blessings for detachment from honor and gain. Just as devotion is taught to be the head of meditation, this meditator constantly prays to the Lama, who opens the vault of pith instructions. Grant your blessings for uncontrived devotion to well forth. Just as non-distraction is taught to be the body of meditation, this meditator simply remains without altering the fresh essence of whatever thought arises. Grant your blessings for parting from the concept of meditation. just as thought is taught to be in essence Dharmakaya. For this meditator unhindered manifestation dawns, nothing whatsoever dawning as whatever may be. Grant your blessings to realize inseparable samsara nirvana. May I never in future lives part from authentic lamas and embracing ever the glory of Dharma. May I perfect the qualities of the levels and paths and thus swiftly attain the state of Vajradhara. Paden sawe lama rinpoche dagi chiwo pende dishukla katrin chimpo gone jisungde kusung tuchi ngudrup sautu so. So that last short prayer was to my root guru. Yeah, and we can say that as well, you know, if you would like to say that, maybe in the next session I can talk about that a little bit. But now let's start with the actual teaching on the second session of the precious human life. So first of all, we should recite the text, the root text. And again, I'll say that in English, and then we can say it in the Tibetan phonetics. So it's called The Difficulty of Getting a Fully Endowed Human Life. This first meditation topic concerns the precious human life, endowed with every freedom and asset. It is difficult to get and can be easily destroyed, so now is the time to make it meaningful. Tangpo komcha dalcho rinchendi, topka jikla tare tanyurcha. That's all. It's so concise in the Tibetan, and yet it has such a wealth of meaning. So, but just one sentence really. And so now we're going to unpack that somewhat and explore it, and meditate and use it for our practice. So, if you want to take a few notes while we're going, that's fine. But you know, not every word, just the key points. So. In the previous session, the first session of this precious human life, we looked mainly at the sort of disadvantaged states, the things that we need to avoid or to be careful about. So now we're going to move on to the advantaged states, the things that we need to cultivate, and whatever we already have, we need to not take for granted, because there's no saying if we're going to get a precious human life in our next lifetime. Only if we use this life well will that come to pass. Otherwise, we won't. So, and that we'll go into that aspect more when we talk about karma, and also the second one is actually death and impermanence. The third one is karma, cause and effect, and the last one is the illusory nature of worldly life. But all four of them are all part of the same understanding. There's no actual division between one and another. But you know, just to sort of make it into something that we can get our heads around, you know, then Rinchen Khandro, Lord Recite, Rinpoche, he kind of set it out in this way to make it easier for us to get some understanding and to do it in stages. So now we're going to look at the 10 blessings. Here we have another number. We always have lots of numbers in Buddhism, but again, it's to make it into sort of bite-sized pieces that we can handle or swallow. And so the 10 blessings and advantages of precious human life. And they are actually split into two lots of 5. So basically the point of it all is to really appreciate that it's very rare to have a precious human life. We tend to take what we are familiar with a little bit for granted, and we don't realize how fortunate we are. So we need to really understand that we have this precious human body. What makes it particularly precious is that we're sound in body and sound in mind. Not everybody is. So we need to be very thankful that we have, you know, our senses intact, our body intact. and that also we're born into good circumstances, unlike the majority of beings who maybe not. Of course, as well as appreciating what we have, we shouldn't be sort of proud about it or think, oh, we're all right, sort of thing, because other people or other beings don't have that. Actually, this is to really cultivate our compassion, our wisdom and our compassion, because for the very reason that not everybody has these fortunate circumstances. And so that's really the whole motivation why we enter the Dharma, is not just for ourselves, but in order to be able to help others. So first we have to kind of, help ourselves so that we're in a position to help others. Of course, we don't have to wait till we're fully enlightened to help others, but we need to be really strong in our Dharma practice, otherwise we can fall back. So there's 10 blessings, or we can say advantages of a precious human life. And as I said, they're split into 2 lots of 5. So the first 5 are to do with the personal sort of advantages from oneself. And the second 5 are more to do with the external blessings or advantages from others. So with regard to the personal advantages from oneself, so we have this precious human body. We have our bodies intact. Of course, we're prone to get sick from time to time, or we might get injured, or that kind of thing. But generally speaking, our body is working. And the same is true of our mind. Our mind is functioning, is fully functioning. And again, of course, our health goes up and down, our mental health goes up and down. But basically, we do have our senses and we have our faculties. And so we should be very thankful. And yeah, as I said, we should appreciate that we won't always necessarily have everything that we have now unless we really use it. If we waste this opportunity that we have, then it's not likely that we'll get the same opportunity again. If we put this in a worldly way, you could say that, for example, say you pass your exams and you go to university, but then you completely waste your time. And so you might have to leave university because you're not using your opportunity well. So it's a bit like that, there's no guarantee that you're going to continue to have these good opportunities even in this life, or certainly not in the next life. So I know that's quite hard to get our minds around if you're not used to thinking of multiple lives, but even just for this life, things can go horribly wrong if we don't use our opportunities well, or if we become proud and not sort of appreciate that other people may not have these opportunities, and we should not feel proud about in that way, but we should feel humble. Actually, it's a cause for humility. We should be thankful in that humbled way, and do what we can to help others be in a position to also be able to get a fully precious and endowed human life. That's actually key to our motivation, is to develop compassion. This is what the Buddha did, isn't it? When he first, in the story of the Buddha, when he left the temple for the first time and saw all the suffering, that was what motivated him to become Buddha, to develop his wisdom and through compassion for others. And not just for human beings, but for all beings. So for animals and the ones we can see and even the ones we can't see. So that's the first one, is to have this kind of big thankfulness and appreciation of understanding that, it's not a given that it will continue like this. Things change, and we'll go into that when we talk about death and impermanence. But I think we all understand that everything is subject to change. So to really appreciate and use our opportunity. Then the second one is that we've been born in a place, a country, a land, where we do have freedom to access the Dharma and to practice it. And again, not to take it for granted, because there's many, many places where that is not the case. Some countries, they've never even heard of the Dharma. Other countries, they maybe have heard of the Dharma, but you can't practice it because the government in control doesn't allow it, or something like that. Or circumstances in that country might be at war. Or, it's not that such a given. It's not taken for. We should never take it for granted just because in our country we can have access and practice whatever faith we wish to. It's also a very precious endowment. Even if you look in Tibet, we're in this Tibetan lineage, but right now it's people don't have that freedom to practice, or maybe they're allowed to practice a bit, but not in the way that they would like to. Sometimes it becomes like a tourist thing. I'm telling the truth here. It's that there is some kind of practice, but it's. I've been to Tibet and I've seen how it is. So it might look as if it's okay, and that a few monasteries have been rebuilt, but nothing like it was before. So we should be very, very thankful that we're in a place where we have got the freedom to practice and how we wish to practice, and places. So it's another great endowment, making our life precious. Then also, we have been born with our faculties intact. This is, by that I mean our our ability to understand. We have our mental faculties are such that we can hear what's being said to us, we can understand what's being said to us. Of course, we have to study and explore things. Things are not always straight away understandable, but we have got everything that we need. We have our intelligence, and we can examine our teachings. Are they true or are they not true? We don't have to swallow everything. We really need to have judgment, don't we? We have to have use our choice, our what's the word? Not cynicism, but to doubt is okay. It's okay to doubt, and to resolve the doubts by looking at things in depth and examining things for ourselves, not just sort of taking them on board because somebody says. So all these things we're using, our judgment and all our faculties. And also we can assimilate the teachings. We can meditate on them. We can not just about reading and studying, but about actually assimilating them and applying them in our life. This is what it's for, isn't it? It's not just to pass an exam. Oh, I've kind of understood it intellectually, but if you don't apply it, then that's not the point of Buddha Dharma. That's just looking at it like an academic subject. So the real reason for it is to apply it in our lives, so that we can discover our own Buddha nature. And then the fourth one is that we've not got caught up in wrong views, but that we have found the Dharma. We've found the Buddha Dharma, the true Dharma. And especially as beginners, this is so important, because there's a lot of false prophets out there. There's a lot of false teachings, there's a lot of false views, even very harmful views, and people who would take advantage of us, who will preach very noxious things, even things that, if you're not using your brain, if you're not using your intelligence, then you can get caught up by, if you're gullible, by something just because somebody preaches something that it sounds okay, it sounds good, or maybe he's a very good teacher or preacher. So we have to really look into things for ourselves. And also, I think for me, I always think of, I look at actions, not just words. Whoever's teaching, I look at their actions, not just what they're saying. Because of course, Hitler was a great orator, but I wouldn't follow Hitler, would you? So it's kind of like that. It's a very extreme example, but nonetheless, a lot of people did get caught up in all that. And even in Buddhism, we should always be wary of who we're taking teachings from, and are they from an authentic lineage? Have they got the backing of their teacher? So otherwise things can go wrong, so don't even Buddhism, just don't swallow everything. There are some false prophets also. So we have to really know who and where we're taking the teachings from, and to always use your intelligence. And then the fifth one is that we've started to trust the three jewels. I'm speaking if we're beginners. If we're well into the Dharma, then definitely we do trust the three jewels. But even as beginners, we must have start to trust the three jewels, otherwise why would we continue? So by the three jewels, we're talking about the Buddha, the Buddha's teachings, and the noble Sangha, those who came after the Buddha, who have also attained enlightenment and progressed the teachings or made commentaries on them, or things like that. So we're very fortunate that we've actually encountered the true Buddha Dharma and that we've got trust in it. And this is such an important step as beginners to have that, to have met that true Dharma. And then as the more we find out about the Dharma, about the Buddha, about the Sangha, about the Buddha's teachings, the more our trust develops, and it turns into faith. And then the faith starts to blossom and grow. And then it becomes really of the heart as well as the mind. And it becomes unshakable because you know that it works. Not because somebody's told you, but because you've actually gone into it yourself. And you know from experience that it works, that it's true, that it rings true. You've applied it in your life, and then you see the real truth of it. You've sat with it, you've meditated on it, you've seen how it works. And that's how faith develops, and the more you go into it, and the more trust that you develop and faith you develop in your teachers, it becomes something so glorious and so you feel so appreciative and so thankful that, it just blossoms by itself. You don't have to try it. It just kind of happens because of the great appreciation that one builds for having encountered it and cultivated it. So those are the five personal advantages that one has kind of in oneself. And of course, that you need to be able to meditate and look into each one of those. And now we'll move on to the five external blessings from others, sort of way of describing it. So now we can look at something on a big scale, the biggest scale. So throughout all beginningless time, since beginningless time, all the eons, and throughout beginningless space, if you think of not just one universe, but the multiverses that have been formed and destroyed. Now, as human beings, we tend to just think of our world, maybe the planets in our galaxy, things that we can sort of see or with a telescope. But that's just what we can see with the aid of what we have. But if you went back in time, they wouldn't have even had that much to understand, would they? They would have most people thought the world was flat, and then you'd probably fall off the edge. Or even when you knew that there was the planets going around each other, but we don't have a sense of endless space or endless time. It's just too much for our brains. But I think for me it helps to think of nature and to sort of see things that are, if you think of things that are very tiny, like atoms are a bit like tiny planets. And so the pattern, my own observations is the pattern of the way things exist, or the way things are, is the same whether you're talking about something very, very tiny or something huge, unimaginably infinite. Things come into being, they abide for a while, and then they change, they degrade or they're destroyed in one way or another, just like a human life. Body comes into being, There's a body that lives for that lifetime, and then that body dies, but the energy, the consciousness does not die, because that was not born. That's not a physical thing, but the physical aspects of things are born, and then they live for a while and then they die. Or you think of a tree and coming through the seasons and coming into blossom in spring, and then fully blossoming in the summer, and then autumn, and the leaves start to die off, and then the winter there's no leaves at all, but then the spring comes again, and it's this cycle of being born and living and dying, and the whole thing kind of cycles of it. So now we're talking about eons, times beyond, can't even imagine it, and spatially universes, but multiple universes being born and dying. We know that stars die, for example. So throughout all of this time, since beginningless time and space, the coming of a Buddha is actually quite rare, very rare in fact. The coming and the influence of a Buddha in our world is a very, very rare event. So this is another reason why we have this very precious opportunity, but this depends on sort of outer circumstances. Now, for example, now when we think of the Buddha, we think of Buddha Shakyamuni, who is the Buddha of our age. But he's not the first Buddha. What we know of is that he is the fifth Buddha. And then maybe there were Buddhas before that, we don't know, but we do know, according to Shakyamuni Buddha, that he's the fifth Buddha, and there will be Buddhas in the future. So the fact is that they're very, very rare, and that we are extremely fortunate to be born in an age where Shakyamuni Buddha's influence is still very much with us. He was born roughly 2,500 years ago, but his influence is very much with us. So this is another reason to be so thankful and appreciative of this precious opportunity that we have. And then the second one is about, okay, so there are some enlightened beings who have reached Buddhahood, but not all of them teach. Just because one has reached full enlightenment and has discovered one's Buddha nature, does not necessarily mean one is going to teach. And there are beings who have reached that kind of enlightenment who don't teach. So again, we're very, very fortunate that in the age that we're born in, the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, was the greatest teacher and taught extensively and in many, many different ways to suit all the different types of beings, because there are so many types of beings, and not every teaching would be understandable by every person. So he taught all different levels of understanding appropriate to whoever he was teaching. And again, we have this rich treasury of teachings that will suit us, some of which suit us depending on where we are in the path. And then the Buddha did say that the third one is that the Buddha did say that his teachings would endure for 5,000 years. And so we're actually in the midpoint, because he was born roughly 2,500 years ago, taught 2,500 years ago, and so there's another 2,500 years to go from the point where we are now before those teachings start to fade. So we're extremely lucky to be in this position, because the Buddha's teachings are still flourishing and we have access to them. And yeah, it's not a given. It's really a very, very rare set of circumstances. Then the fourth one is that at this time that we're living in, there are now many followers of the Buddha Dharma. And so we have the company of like-minded people. We can help each other along the path. We're not just on our own. And when we go to gatherings, like for example the Kagyu Monlam gatherings, which are held every year, people come from all over the world. It's very inspirational when you see monks and nuns and lay people from every country gathering together in Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha attained enlightenment. So that's obviously one of the most holy places, sacred to Buddhists. I've been to many, this year it's not happening because of the COVID situation, but normally that's what would happen. And hopefully, I'm sure it will, get going again. And then that's not the only one. They have them in different countries and different teachings when people congregate and gather. And it's very inspirational, that when you're with a lot of other like-minded people. So it's very wonderful to have that opportunity. And then the fifth one is that not only do we have like-minded people, but we also have the support and resources of the teachers, wonderful lamas and teachers, and the Sangha. All of them work hard to enable the practice, to propagate the teachings. In fact, they're more accessible now than they've ever been. Because, this is look at that you're receiving this online. In some ways it's unfortunate that people can't be here at the moment, physically here in the centre. But on the upside of that, it's made me put it online, which means that lots more people can actually access the teachings. And of course, there's many, many great teachers who are doing this. It's not just little old me, we have. Of course, you should try to. When we can, we should try to go to teachings in person, because that's the best, But the upside with this is that you can access the teachings online and at different times, that in different time zones, what's convenient for you. Of course, we should be careful and not be casual about this. We should try to, when we attend the teachings online, we should imagine that we're actually sitting in the shrine room with whoever's teaching, and to be respectful in that way, so you're not kind of eating and drinking or just lolling about, but as if you're sitting in front of the teacher. I think it's really good to sort of bear that in mind. I try to always do that when I'm receiving teachings online. And apologies if I'm a few minutes late. I kind of apologize, even out loud. It's good not to be casual, but to treasure the teachings. So, nothing can replace being in the presence of the teacher, but it's still a tremendous help to be able to access the teachings, and really we should count our blessings. Really, that's a tremendous blessing. So, because of these five, the 5 from self, the 5 from others, these 5 blessings or endowments or advantages, we should really pray that others might also be able to experience and have these precious resources. And so when we do our practice, we should be motivated like that and put effort and enthusiasm into our practice, so that it not only helps us, but it makes us able to progress and then be in a better position to help others. We have something to share. We have something to give. So these are all really, really important blessings that we should treasure and use. So now we're going to look at the reasons and the numbers. Really, this is about how, when we look at the world, we think, there's so many human beings in this world, there's millions of people, but comparatively, as human beings who have these right circumstances are extremely rare. So we're going to look at that a bit more. For example, most beings, not just human beings, but animals, and then if you remember when we talked about the hell realms, the beings in the hell realms and the beings in the hungry ghost realms, all of these beings, there's so many. The sort of lower beings, there's more of them in those realms, because most beings are engaged in negative acts. out of ignorance. You know, people act negatively out of ignorance. They don't get it. They don't understand what's going on. So, and those that don't have human faculties, who are less or even more ignorant, they really act very negatively. I mean, even just the things that we can see. If you look at the animal realm, for example, you know, animals, they're killing each other all the time. That's not to say that they don't do something virtuous. They do look after their young mostly, but not always. You know, sometimes you'll get the father will eat the children or something like that. But animal life is very, very dog eat dog. You know, and so there's a lot of killing going on, and then the ones who are in the lower realm, the animal realm, the ones in the hungry ghost realm that always engage in negative acts, and the ones in the hell realms, that, you know, that's what brought them there. And they're kind of in that pattern, in that way of being. It's very hard to get out of. The more entrenched you get in a way of being, the more difficult it is to get out of. It's not impossible, but it's really difficult. And so there's many billions more of them than in the lower realms than in the human realm. And of course there's many billions more animals than there are humans. So it goes up like that, you know. So for example, if you just lift up a rock, all the insects that you'll find under one rock, millions of insects, you know, you probably don't even see them all, but to get that amount of people, you know, you'd have to be in a really big area, maybe a city. It's kind of like a city under a rock, isn't it? I don't know if you've ever done anything like that. Or you look at an ant's nest or something, and these great big nests that you can get. They're not that big. They're in maybe something as big as a table or something, and then there's billions of ants in there. So, it would not be possible to count it would be extremely difficult to count the amount of ants in a big ant's nest. You know, one of these. I've seen them when I've been in the woods. You know, sometimes you see like a hill, and it's like a little hill. I almost sat on one once, and then I realised it was moving because it was just ants. So there must have been billions of ants in there. But whereas, you know, relatively speaking, you could easily count the human beings in a city or a country. We do this all the time, and we know how many people live in the UK or in France or wherever it is. You know, it's not comparatively that many compared to insects, and that's just insects, not all the other animals, or birds, fish, whatever, you know, life forms. So, talking about living beings, there's only a very, very few of them who are human, and then not only are they human, but they have all the advantages and endowments to practice the Dharma. So that makes that's even more rare, much more rare. And then even the ones that have had the good fortune or the good karma, you could say, to have encountered the Dharma and be practicing the Dharma, those that continue with it, that practice really diligently and live their lives, those are even more rare. Those that really persevere and become Buddhas are, they say, as rare as the morning stars. It's very difficult to see a star in the morning, isn't it? It's very, very rare. So if we have got the good fortune to have attained a precious human life and to have met with the Buddha Dharma, all of these, what a terrible waste it would be not to use this rare and precious opportunity. There's, you know, and the fact, because it's not easy to get and it's very easy to lose. There's a very, the other point is that we don't know how long our lives are going to last. You know, just because we're a certain age, maybe you're, 20 years old or somebody's 70 years old, but the 20-year-old could die before the 70-year-old. It's not a given that, that just because you're young that you're going to live a long time. You could, well, we'll go into this when we talk about death and impermanence in more detail, but, you don't have to look too far to see, that younger people can die, and there's all the different ways that you can die, and you never know when you're going to die. So it might be in years' time, or a month's time, or a week's time, or a day's time. We just don't know. So the point is to make the most of what we have, since we have all these good qualities and opportunities. What a criminal waste it would be not to use it. There's a metaphor that is used in this sort of classical, I'm not sure I read it. It might be in the Torch of Meaning. It probably is. But to kind of get a handle on how rare it is to have all these opportunities. If you imagine a vast ocean, imagine, like, say, the Pacific Ocean, a huge ocean, and then somewhere in that ocean there's a turtle, a blind turtle, swimming around at some point in the ocean. And then at another point in the ocean, there's a boat, and somebody throws out what do you call them? Life ring? What do they call those? Rescue rings? A life ring? A life belt. A life belt, they call it. So imagine somebody throwing out a life belt somewhere in the ocean. Meanwhile, this blind turtle is swimming around, and at some point decides to come up for air, and it comes up, and it just happens to put its head through the life belt. What are the chances of that? You'd say it was almost, but not totally, impossible. That's the kind of rare we're talking about. I get quite a graphic image of this happening, and it's something that I've never forgotten because it is so rare, isn't it? But not impossible. So also, we don't know how long our life is going to last, so we really have to use it. In fact, His Holiness the Karmapa, the 17th Karmapa, suggested a very helpful practice, which I found really useful. And he suggested, imagine that one day was like, one day of 24 hours was a lifetime. So one day and one night, a lifetime. A mini lifetime, so that when we wake up in the morning, imagine that you're being born into a new day, imagine that that's the beginning of your life, and we can appreciate everything that we have around us, the air that we're breathing, that we take for granted. We appreciate, the air that we breathe, whatever food we take, nourishment, water that we drink. We really appreciate all these life-giving, life-sustaining things that we encounter. This is as our day goes on, and we're sort of experiencing as if we're growing up and reaching maturity. And then as the day gets longer and we start to get into the evening, it's as if we're starting to experience the old age, and maybe our energy is starting to flag, and we can enjoy our old age, but we don't have maybe the same energy that we had in the morning or in our youth. And then when we go to bed at night, that's like a kind of mini death. We go to sleep. We're not conscious anymore. It's like we have this mini death. And if we're fortunate, we wake up again the next day for the next lifetime. So when we think of it like that, it really makes us appreciate our life and use it well, I think it's a good one to do. I mean, we don't have to do it every single day, but just occasionally it's a good reminder. And helps us not to fritter away our life, on just sort of wasting it, frittering it on trivial stuff, not appreciating it. And another metaphor they say is like a pauper who has this precious jewel. It could completely change his life, but he doesn't know it. He doesn't know he's got this jewel. It's just lying in the dirt. So that's kind of like you've got something, but you're not using it. You're just wasting it. So like that, we don't want to be like the pauper who has the precious jewel and doesn't even know it. So that's a little bit about the reasons and the rarity and the and the numbers, you know, to build up this appreciation. And then the next sort of subtopic we're talking about is the great significance of having this precious human life, the purpose of it, the meaning, the purpose, the significance of it. So, as a human being, we have, with a fully endowed human life, and we have everything we need to attain perfect Buddhahood. It is within our potential. It's our choice whether we use that potential or not. But if we look at what we've done so far, if we look back at how we've spent our life so far, I don't know about you, but I've been a Buddhist for maybe 25 years, but even during that time, and even certainly before it, I waste a lot of time, and even now, I'm sure I waste a lot of time that I could be practicing more, and I would imagine it's the same for you. But if we look at how much time we have in the past squandered our life on very worldly pursuits, especially with growing up, we do all sorts of crazy things. Of course, it's part of growing up, but, the amount of effort we put into our work, for example. Now, we're not saying there's anything wrong with working, no, not at all, but just imagine the amount of effort that we put into our work and obtaining wealth. So not just about working to live, but sometimes it kind of goes over to living to work. We're working too much. It's not we don't necessarily have to work that much, maybe. But maybe we're motivated because we want more. It's not just enough to live reasonably comfortable. We want to have a better house, or we want to have a bigger car, or we want to have, this kind of worldly pursuits. It's never ending. If we get into that, what they call it, keeping up with the Joneses, that kind of mentality. So you're not just working to have a decent living, and you've got a good roof over your head, you've got food to eat, you go to school, you go to university maybe, you live a decent life. But when you go beyond that and you're just working for the sake of it to get more and more and more, there's no end. I mean, look at these people like, the guy that owns Amazon and all these people that have billions and billions and billions that they can't possibly spend. And I know some of it goes to good causes, but they're using their precious human life to do all of this thing, all of these unnecessary things, and not, I shouldn't give examples because I don't know the people personally, but I don't think they're particularly involved with the realizing their Buddha nature. Maybe. Anyway, the point is we need to look at ourselves, not so much at other people, but look at ourselves and see what we're doing with our lives. So, of course, we need to work to have a good living, and we should have good livelihood, something that isn't harmful, and. But to just consume more and more and more and deplete the earth's resources, that's the other side of it. It's not just we suffer from being greedy, by being too greedy. So then it tips over into being greedy and feeding your body, but feeding with things that are not good for it, actually. Because too much of anything is not good for it, and the same is true of, when you're taking the earth's resources, you're depleting the earth. We can see how this has happened. We are responsible for what's happening with climate change, to the environment, because of greed, human greed. That's at the bottom of it, isn't it? The earth has enough resources to feed everybody, as long as you don't take too much. But once you go on to that sort of it's like a hamster wheel, isn't it, going round and round. There's no end to it. You just want more and more and more. And then that's when the problems start personally and also environmentally and on a global scale. It's out of balance, basically. Anyway, the point is that I'm making here is that if we used even 10% of the energy that we put into doing stuff like that, into, sort of exploring the Dharma and how we can benefit ourselves and others, probably we'd all be enlightened by now, or certainly well on the way. So it's about prioritizing. I'm not saying give up work or don't have a nice house or anything like that, but we need to know when when enough is enough, basically. And that's hard, isn't it? It's quite hard to know when enough is enough. Really, I think if we just try to keep it simple. And that's not easy, because all around us, people are trying to sell us stuff, aren't they? To get the latest car, to get the latest whatever it is, phone and things like that. Whatever it is, we're kind of being taught, advertising. I used to work in advertising, so I know what it's like. I used to be a copywriter until I couldn't stand it anymore, and I thought, what am I even doing, But this is, at the bottom of that is people are wanting to sell stuff because they make money out of us. And they make so much money that they become billionaires. And we become sort of enslaved by the whole system. So we need to have our wits about us and, understand when enough is enough and to keep our lives relatively simple. And actually we're more happy for it. We're definitely happier for it, because when you start to get in that kind of wanting more and more and more, it's like as if you're drinking seawater. You're thirsty, so you take some seawater, but the salt only makes you more thirsty, and so you drink more and more and more. It's kind of like that. There's no end to the thirst. It just gets worse. So we definitely don't want to be like that. We need to know what's truly valuable, what's truly precious. Not the sort of little baubles that they try to bedazzle us with. So, if we just kind of bear in mind what our true purpose in life is to liberate ourselves. To be liberated from this kind of enslavement into our greed, our wants, our never-ending appetites for things that are kind of played to by advertising, things like that. But all of these things, it's up to us. We need to be on guard that we don't fall into that. That we just have what we need and comfortable, live a decent life. But not overdo it so that everything gets out of balance within ourselves and we don't have any time left to pursue our true purpose, which is to realize our Buddha nature. That's how we liberate ourselves from all of this greed and wanting and desire, untrammeled desire or hatred, or all of these things burst, they pop. Like all of that ignorance is like a bubble that imprisons us, and that we can burst with knowledge, with wisdom, with compassion, by becoming enlightened, by becoming who we truly are. And so, when this takes time and it takes effort, The Buddha had to put a lot of effort into it, and for many lives. We don't have to be in it for the long haul. But the alternative is to remain enslaved by our desires and our wants and our needs, and not the needs so much, but on this sort of wheel of samsara that we've been treading on, for this hamster wheel that we need to get off of that, And the way to do that is to understand, develop our wisdom, develop our compassion, develop our understanding. And through that, it's like the light dawns. That's what enlightenment means, isn't it? It's like nothing has actually changed outwardly, but the light's gone on. Now we can see how things really are. So, we have to persevere and put effort into this, just as the Buddha did. Full enlightenment, omniscience, it's like, it's a big deal, isn't it? There's nothing more. So we shouldn't be impatient, and think it's going to be like, I've been a Buddhist for 20 years and I'm still not enlightened, I want my money back, It's not like that, But at all the steps along the way, and it's not like 1 minute you're unenlightened, next minute you're enlightened. It goes in stages, the levels and the paths. We refer to it in the Vajradhara, the lineage prayer. Be like Vajradhara. So go through the levels and paths. So each time, each level that you get on it, you're becoming more enlightened than the last level. So it's like that. It happens in stages as our understanding grows. So we shouldn't be impatient, but we should have diligence and joy in the Dharma, because it's so precious. It's our key. It's the key to enlightenment. It's the key to liberation. It's up to us to turn it. That's why it's called self-liberation. Self. We have to work. Nobody can do it for us. They can help us, but they can't do it for us. Buddha can help us. All the great teachers can help us, but it's up to us to walk the walk. So when we meet the Dharma through a guru, through a lama, this is it's good fortune. It's a sign of a previous good tendencies in previous lifetimes. And nothing happens by accident. So the fact that you're listening to the Dharma, the fact that you meet teachers, all of this is not by accident. This is your karma good karma from previous lifetimes. We call karma good or bad. It's not that it's good or bad. It's kind of it is what it is. It's whatever we deserve. Basically, we get our just deserts. Whether we consider that to be good or bad is down to our way of seeing. But really, any good things that happen in your life or good circumstances that you encounter is because of previous good tendencies in your previous lifetimes, or this lifetime as well. So now that we have this, and that's why we really do need to use up these opportunities that we have, because they don't last forever. We will lose them if, what is it called? Use it or lose it. Yeah, that's how it is. Use it or lose it. And so when we notice our own faults, this is important actually. We need to notice, what's preventing us. What are our obstacles? What are our inner obstacles? Because those are like the obstacles on the path, and we talked about this a little bit last time. But we shouldn't beat ourselves up or feel bad. Oh, I've been, angry today, or I was impatient with somebody, or I wanted that thing too much. When we notice it, that's good. That's when we should really celebrate that we noticed it. Because if you notice it, then you can do something about it. That's when maybe I'm being a bit greedy here. Do I really need to take the last cake? Or do I really need to have that new pair of trainers when I only bought some last year? Things like that. We can see it in ourselves and say, okay, check yourself out all the time. Don't drive yourself crazy with it, but you need to know what's going on, where you're at. Where are you at? That's what the Dharma's for, knowing where we're at. And when we see something that could do with correcting, we need to correct it. We don't need to, get the sackcloth and ashes out and start beating ourselves up. We need to look, okay, that's how it is, right, so I can do something about that. And of course, it takes time, because habits build up over a long time. So we have to be patient with ourselves as well, not get angry with ourselves. But at the same time, don't let yourself get away with the phrase is murder, but don't be too sort of lenient on yourself either. You need to kind of know if you're being a bit spoiled, like with a child, if you're being too spoiled or too indulged, let's say. So be kind to ourselves, like you would be kind to others, but you don't have to, be too self-indulgent. So, when you found something like that and you've corrected it, then hey, you can really be joyful about that. That's good. That's great. Also, we should be very careful about not. I mentioned something about not becoming under the sway of like advertising and people trying to sell us stuff. But there's also different kinds of beings that we should be careful of. Actually, there's a list of them which I'm going to look at. It's in the Torch of True Meaning and the Torch of Certainty as well. So I'll just read out the list. So it says there are 10 kinds of individuals who are unlikely to be born in human form. And so who are they? What kind of beings are we talking about here? So they are those who have never generated the roots of virtue. They've never, for example, we just said about, any good things, when you meet the Dharma or you meet the teacher, it's because of having accumulated virtue or good tendencies in your previous life or this life. So we're talking about people who haven't done that, beings who haven't done that. So they haven't accumulated any merit because they haven't done anything virtuous. So we need to be wary of people who have not done anything virtuous. And then also those who are influenced by negative friends in inverted commas. When people are negative, it's usually because they're ignorant. It's not because they set out to be negative. It's because they don't know what they're doing. They don't understand what they're doing in the bad karma, the negative karma that they're accruing for themselves. Was it not Jesus that said, forgive them for they know not what they do? So we're not saying look down on them or don't forgive them. Definitely forgive them. But be careful. I wouldn't sort of choose them for your friends, because there's a risk that you can get pulled down into their negative ways. That's how it happens, isn't it? And it can happen online. There's a lot of it online, isn't there? There's these hate preachers and people like that, but who have some kind of charisma or something like that. So we need to be on guard against those kind of people. Those whose afflictions continuously propagate themselves. They're just by afflictions we talk about the 5 mind poisons of greed and negativity and of untrammeled desire or avarice, hate, aversion, ignorance, pride, all of these things. So when they're continuously propagating that to others or in themselves, and then they are not those who are not afraid of the sufferings of future lives because they don't even understand that. So they're not afraid of it. They don't consider, maybe I'm messing up not only this life but maybe future lives as well, because they have no understanding of karma or cause and effect. Whose minds are agitated by the afflictions and constantly forget the Dharma. They might have even encountered the Dharma, but they're just always becoming distracted and lazy about it. So they may as well not have encountered it because they're not following it. And then those who seem to embrace the Buddha's teachings, but do not follow them. And there's quite a lot of people that, that will go to lots and lots of teachings and profess to be Buddhists, but they don't actually follow the Buddha's teachings. They just go to lots of teachings, but they don't actually apply them. A lot of people like that. And it's easy to become like that if we're not careful. That's a kind of greed, isn't it? You have this greed to go to many, many Dharma teachings, and maybe you're quite wealthy, so you might travel around and go to different teachers in different countries and spend a lot of money on it. But if you don't apply the teachings, it's a waste, complete waste. So we have to be careful of those, and those who follow wrong views and who cling to wrong views very tightly. So all of these people, these types of beings, we need to, of course we can have compassion for them if we can see that they're barking up the wrong tree. But it's best not to be too close to them, because we ourselves are not yet that strong, and we can be easily influenced. So until we're really sure of ourselves and our Dharma practice, even just like somebody who's, maybe you met them at a teaching, but they just want to always pull you into some trivial thing, take you away from your practice. They're maybe not terrible people, they're just not really on the path, not really understanding. So we want to be careful of not getting influenced by those kind of mistaken ideas. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. So we should be careful of them. It doesn't mean to say that we should ignore them or anything. And we should still be kind to people and help them if we can, but really not to be too close where we might get pulled down. It's as if somebody is an alcoholic or some, oh, come on, let's have another drink. Oh, what's one more drink? There's that, unless we're really strong, we can get pulled into things, can't we? So we just have to be a bit aware of things like that and have compassion for them, not to, just because we don't want to be too close doesn't mean to say we shouldn't feel compassion for them. Of course we should, and we should, if we can help them. But until we're really strong, we should be wary that we're not weak to get pulled into negative ways. That's what that's all about, really. So we've looked at the 10 blessings, the 5 advantages of precious human life that to do with oneself. The 5 advantages that are more sort of external from others. And then we've just looked at the reasons and the numbers, and also the great significance and purpose. To awaken our true Buddha nature, motivated also to help other beings do the same. All our motivation should be pure. Whatever we do, even just our going about our daily life, if we have that good motivation, that all helps, because that will help us to act in virtuous ways. And it's to be applied, not studied, yes, meditated on, yes, applied in our life. Then it's real, then it, but in fact, we do definitely need to meditate on it, because that's how we really, as well as understanding it mentally, we need to take it on board and sit with it, feel it. It's a feeling and experiencing it, seeing how it works in our life. Then it becomes really real. Not just words. You get the meaning, not just the words. So I think it would be good now to maybe do some meditation and to sit with what we've just been looking at, exploring. I think we have had a look at this preliminary foundation of precious human life, and we can let our minds rest in it now and sit with it and absorb what we've been studying. I'll just get the gong. And And well, if you have any questions, what we do is we're going to be leaving, a few weeks in between this and the next topic, or in between the first and second sessions of each topic, so that there's time to practice it. Don't rush things, but if you can try and practice it every day, and then look into things deeply, and whatever questions come up, you try to resolve them yourself. Look into them. That's what it means, isn't it? But then at the end of that time, if there's something bothering you, if there's something that's not clear to you, you're welcome to email me at our address in Samyuzong, Edinburgh. So you can make a little note of anything that is really bothering you, and I'll try and help you out. But I think most of the time we can usually solve it for ourselves. We shouldn't be lazy about looking into it. I think it's a bit like going to the doctor with some problem, and then, if you have to wait, by the time you've got there, very often you can resolve it yourself. Not in every case, of course. Okay, so let's, first of all, straighten up your posture. And just, whether you're sitting cross-legged or in a chair. If you're sitting in a chair, you need to bring your bottom forward so you're not leaning on the back of the chair, and then you need to plant your feet directly under your knees with sort of hip width apart. Or you might prefer to kneel. However you're sitting, it's very important to have a straight back, not rigid, but straighten it up. And imagine your vertebra going into your neck, and then your head resting on the top, and the crown of your head reaching up as if you were growing up towards the light, like a tree growing up to the light. And from the waist down, it's like you're earthing, sitting, feeling yourself planted into the earth. I like to sit with my hands right on top of the other one. Is usually how it's advised, and the thumb tips gently touching. Let your eyes rest, but keep them open. They don't have to be wide open, but just resting naturally. Take a moment to focus on your breathing. Just check that you're using your belly and your diaphragm as well as your chest. This is important not only when you're meditating, but at any point in your life, because otherwise you can get quite sort of stressed, and the way to de-stress is to just breathe from low down in your belly and your diaphragm, allowing them to fill and empty with each breath. Taking in the fresh energy and releasing the stale energy on the out-breath. Each cycle, taking in the fresh air, releasing the stale air. Using your whole body. And we can count 21 breaths. By that I mean an in-breath and an out-breath. Count to 21 inwardly. From now. And the body maintaining a good posture, the mind settled, resting at ease, fully aware, resting in awareness. So when you become aware of thoughts arising, then you can turn your thoughts to what we've been talking about. Precious human life, and in particular the 5 advantages from oneself. The first topic, the 5 advantages from oneself. Good fortune that we have endowed with our senses, all our faculties, a human body, not to take it for granted, to use it well. Look into it in terms of our own life. Is this true? How is it true? Do we appreciate what we have? Could we use what we have more meaningfully? we make the most of our opportunities. To realize our true Buddha nature and to help others do the same. And then rest the mind again, letting go of the analytical meditation, just resting in awareness. Don't let the mind become tight, just allow it to rest naturally, peaceful, thankful. Joyful. We don't have to manufacture joy or try to be this or that, but just to allow our appreciation to blossom, and then it becomes joy by itself, and we appreciate what we have. That's the thing, isn't it? When we do start to have some understanding of the gift that we have, we can't be proud about it. We just can be humble and thankful. So, that's just a taste, and we just use the first bit of the first topic as a sort of sample of how to kind of meditate, but of course you do it in your own way. It was just some kind of idea of how to approach your session. When you do your sessions at home, you should do it, at least do the Refuge Prayer. Of course, if you want to do the lineage prayer, that's wonderful. You can learn it and you can do it. It's very inspirational. But at least do the Refuge Prayer to get your mind in the right state. And then you say the root text that we're studying at the moment on precious human life. And then you can go through the text itself, spend some time reading it and, contemplating. Also, if you have the books, Torture of Certainty or Torture of True Meaning, you can study that for a little while. And then sit with it. This is really important, to sit with it and just let everything sink in. And just, what we did there, we first of all, we relaxed our minds, we rested in awareness. First you need to let the mind settle, isn't it? That's why we do the 21 breaths. I mean, it's not obligatory to do that, but I find it's a good way, because by the time you've had 21 breathings, your body's relaxed into the breathing, you remind yourself how to breathe, and also the mind settles. Usually by the time you got to 21, the mind's definitely settled and just resting. But you still need to maintain awareness, because we're not kind of resting to go to sleep. We want to be sharp in our awareness, and then we can look at the different topics, just one each day. So you look at that topic and you let your mind play with it, just rest with it, and then just kind of explore it. You can use your analysis. Well, how does this work? How has it been in my life today or yesterday, or what might I do? Just do it your own way. You need to look at your own life. But then when the mind starts to get a little bit tight with it and maybe too much like hard work, then just let the mind rest again and relax, maintaining the awareness, but just spacious. And then when you start to start thinking again, then take up the topic again. So you're alternating the different types of meditation between resting in awareness and analysis or exploration. So you're using the mind's tendencies to either be busy or be very relaxed, but maybe too relaxed. So you're using that kind of thing, and it's like tuning an instrument, using the mind's tendencies to either be busy, so give it something to be busy with that you're studying and you want to explore, and then when it gets too much like that, then let it rest again, but maintaining the awareness. So that's the method that we use. And of course you can meditate when you're going around in your daily life. You can be walking along the river or something and just see how things are. You can look at the way things exist, the way the patterns of nature is a really great guide. Observe, use your powers of observation, and with this in mind, with the precious human life in mind. Okay, so that's it for today. So the topics, I'll just run through the list again in case you need it. So the first topic is the 5 advantages of precious human life, the personal advantages. So that's actually the 5th topic, isn't it? Because we did 4 in the first session that we did, and then the 6th topic would be the blessings or the advantages from others. The 7th topic is the reasons or the numbers of precious human life, the numbers and kind of rarity. And then the 8th topic is its great significance and purpose, the meaning of it. Okay, so And the next session will be in approximately a month's time. It might be 3 weeks, thereabouts. But so you've got at least 3 weeks, if not a month, to work with this before we move on. And so give it time, and don't be in a rush to just get on to the next one, Go deep. It's very profound, so you can go deep. It's like diving in. And so then at the end of your session, we will say the dedication prayer, so that our sessions we're always thinking of others. In our motivation at the beginning is also to become enlightened for the benefit of other beings as well as ourselves. And at the end, we pray that all beings can benefit from this. So we can say the dedication prayer at the end. O sanam di tamche zikpani, tobne nye pe janam pamchene, jigana chi balabdrugpai, sipe sole doa doa sho. Thank you. And I wish you well in your practice, and I hope to see you next time for the session on change, death, impermanence. But meanwhile, focus on precious human life.